at what happens to the company. But if you take a deeper look at the numbers, the estimated total revenue for all of Voodoo's apps in September 2019 was only $500,000 according to Sensor Tower. And considering that they had to pay for a lot of their 77 million downloads that month, and considering that they have to pay off their 194 employees, this company is definitely losing money. And at the end of the day, would you rather be the dude in this suit who pretends to know what he's doing, when he's actually just throwing a bunch of darts on the wall and hoping that something sticks? Or would you rather be the dude in his room who made one popular game that he thought was cool and ended up changing an industry forever? That's it for me. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
Ну, как бы нет, значит, надо. Ладно. Смешно.
Welcome back to Blackthorn Prod. I'm Noah, an indie game developer, and about 2 weeks ago I released my first little commercial game on Steam, the Dread...
Нет, понял. Да, вот он теперь посмотрел, да. Последний говорил однажды, да. Ну ладно, да, молодец. Ну да. Не, мне интересно, да. Да, наверное, да. Ходи. Нет. Женщина, знаешь, чем хороша? Нет. Он для себя такой взгляд. Да наоборот, он себе думает, вот это, да. Ну вот это он о себе так и думал себе. Ну вот это и было на самом. Ну это немножко, да. Ну хотя нет, наверное, да. Не так же. Ну нет, смотри, тоже да, понимаешь. Да. Ну пересмотри, ну давай пересмотрим вместе, смотри. Ну да, репертуар тебе надо, да, понимаю там типа. Да, то есть как бы он пожар, да. Нет, я понял, да. Круглый. Ой, прямо такая. Даже круглый иначе, да. Круглый, да. Да. Не, как бы для меня-то это хорошо. Ну что это, да. Это как понимаете, любви продукт, ну как бы. Хочешь смейся, хочешь не смейся, Аллах другой любви не знает. Продуктов других не бывает. Ну все остальное такое. Он типа того, да, воздушно. Сомнительно, немножко, да. Ну там, не знаю, кто там. Жизнь, короче, да, понимаешь, как говорите, психиатры, не знаю. Фотографии, как бы, ну это, не надо, это. Да, объективный мир, короче. Жизнь, она не знает других продуктов. Это все свинарный способ. Понтовый и нездоровый, кстати говоря. Если честно, ну это уже извращение. Ты на Нет, ладно, ладно. это скромность. вот наоборот. Опаньки. Здесь к черту. Отношения сколько? Ищи вас туда, отношения, да. Спать надо же. Вверх. Вверх. Нет. Опять не то, что нет. Вот нет. Да. Вот нет. А, для себя. Вот это есть на самом деле. Небо вокруг, там где там можно. В своем духе репертуарном. Мурмур, мур. Мурапеди, мурапеди, мурапеди.
Whispers until the 5th of September, which was launch day. I hadn't made any money with my games. It was just a large collection of small, free-to-play browser games, usually made during game jams, so in a couple days. But making those taught me a lot, and I used that knowledge and skill to create the Dreadful Whispers, a scary, weird world that has about 9 out of 10 on Steam, which is brilliant, and yes, has earned me a bit of cash. So let's dive into some juicy stats. First of all, some basic facts. Steam, which is the platform I launched my game on, is awesome. Games, massive sales, and buying and playing a game is easy peasy. It's a dream for players, a lot less so for itself. Steam takes a large 30% cut of the total revenue you make, so if you make $1,000 for example, you're really just earning $700. So on the 4th of September, one day before the game launched, I had roughly 5,000 wishlists. Anyone can wishlist you. When the game releases or is on sale, they'll receive an email telling you. Basically, wishlists are very important. It more or less represents the number of interested players you have. At launch, I would be selling the game for roughly $10. The dream would be 50% of people that wishlisted my game would buy it. So that would be 2,500 players. Multiply that by 10, and I would earn $25,000. Pretty crazy. I would consider the game to be a financial success if I made $27,500. That's about $3,500 per month of work. And remember, it took me about 8 months to create the Dreadful Whispers. I wasn't full-time on the job, but many days would be spent working on videos or taking part in game jams, and sometimes I would spend a week or two procrastinating or feeling quite unmotivated to work on TDW. So I probably could have made and finished this game in 5 months if I was always motivated and hyper-focused on this one project. But let's face it, we're human, and everyone will slow down and not be in top-notch shape 100% of the time. Anyway, on the 5th of September, I hit the release app button, and in one day I made, drumrolls, a bit more than $4,000. Again, Steam takes a share, so I'm really just earning $3,500. Still awesome, of course. That makes about 500 copies of the game sold on the first day. Launch day is usually when developers make the most cash, so I was of course expecting things to slow down, but no, on day 2 I made $20,000, just kidding. I made about $1,000. Not massive, but damn, still felt great. 2 days later I had made $600, so I'd reached about 5.7 thousand gross revenue, which is roughly 700 players. To my delight, new players were still streaming in throughout that whole first week, so I ended up with $6.7 thousand in gross revenue by the end of week 1. And during the second week, I made about $1,000, which is awesome. I mean, if I earn $1,000 every week with my game, I'll be pretty wealthy in a year. But of course, I highly doubt things will stay like this for very long. These 2 to 3 days have
Наоборот, ну нет, наоборот, специально для тебя, говорит, наоборот, выцепили просто так, да, на ухо, короче, наоборот, да. Вот надо, да, поиздеваться, да, наоборот, только, да. Да нет, да нет, понимаете, да нет,
quiet, with only between 10 and 15 copies sold. So to recap, since launch day, which was 2 weeks, made $7.7 thousand in gross revenue, which is close to 1,000 players. If you remove Steam's 30% share, I have $6.4 thousand I can actually spend. But of course the game will be on sale from time to time. I'll still mention it in future videos, so I trust the Dreadful Whispers will be a nice, small source of passive income during this year and the future. I think now is a good time to also mention that the game has just launched on itch.io. For those of you who don't know, itch.io is where I've uploaded all of my small free games. It's a fantastic platform. The only reason I put the Dreadful Whispers on Steam first was because a lot more people were more comfortable playing there than on itch. And there's also a much larger potential audience. but as promised, if you prefer itch.io and wants to play TW there, you can do so now. The link is in the description. Cherry on the cake, me and Dave Allen get 100% of the revenue on itch.io. That's amazing and the best way to support Black Film Prods. Anyway, back to stats. You'll notice here that for now, about 600 people who had the game on their wish lists actually bought the Dreadful Whispers. And now I have almost 6.5 thousand, so I'm far away from the 50% I was unrealistically hoping for. But hey, it's still nice to see this rising number of wish lists, and who knows, those might turn into sales in the future. Less pleasant are the refunds. At the time of recording, there's been 75, which is about $750 earned and then snatched away. Steam has a pretty generous refund policy. If players play a game for less than 2 hours, they can refund it. The Dreadful Whispers is a pretty short game and can rather easily be completed in less than 2 hours. Whispers is a play a game for less than. Steam has a pretty generous refund policy and recording bills in the future. Rising number of wish lists, and who knows, those might turn into sales are the refunds. At the time of recording, there's been 75, which is about $750 earned, and Steam has a pretty generous refund policy. If players play a game for less than 2 hours, they can refund it. The Dreadful Whispers is a pretty short game and can rather easily be completed in less than 2 hours, considering players aren't interested in discovering the different endings, alternate levels and secrets. So I guess some players are a bit low in cash, or maybe didn't enjoy the experience enough, so ask for refunds. A bit frustrating of course, but it can't be helped. Well, it could be. I could make a longer, more challenging game, or one with a lot more replayability and randomness to lower this refund rate. So what did I learn? Well, first of all, that making money selling games is entirely possible, fun and super exciting. But secondly, becoming a millionaire or earning even 100,000 is very challenging. Let's face it, for now the Dreadful Whispers hasn't earned me that much. Not enough anyway to justify the amount of work I put in. But hey, let's not talk too fast. It's only been 2 weeks after all. I'm just one guy, no family to look after, and I'm earning money with YouTube ads, Patreon, and the Udemy courses I made with my brother. So there was absolutely no pressure for me to make any large sum of money with the Dreadful Whispers. Though it's nice to fantasize about becoming rich with a first game, it's not likely to happen. I have learned a lot, and the Dreadful Whispers is a good game. It's unique and interesting, and I'm proud of it, but of course I can improve so much more. What else have I learned? Well, that Steam is tough. The Dreadful Whispers wasn't featured anywhere significant, as I said in the last video. I have no clue how much more money I would have earned had I been at the top of new and trending, for example, but I guess I'll just find out with my next game and share that with you here in the future. Thirdly, maybe running a pretty successful YouTube channel isn't enough for marketing. I bet all of my chances on my YouTube audience buying and playing the game, and I was hoping that initial exposure would get Steam to highlight the Dreadful Whispers somewhere important and bring in new players, but as you saw, not even 1,000 copies sold, despite my devlog videos getting about 20,000 views. Devlogs on YouTube is enough if the game is absolutely crazy exciting and I get lots of people retweeting and sharing, but I'll probably also make a much bigger effort in contacting press, let's players, going to events to show off my game, and of course setting up the store page much more in advance to build up more hype and wish lists. But the main thing is that I just need to improve my craft. Not even 1% of my total YouTube subscriber count bought the game. That's a pretty clear indication that maybe the trailer wasn't massively exciting from the outside. I stand by the fact that I'm proud of this world and the overall reviews confirm that.
Славы, значит, и славы,
the average player will need more hype, intrigue, and desire before willingly spending his cash, and that's completely normal. And finally, what I learned, well, that the rewards at the end, like money and reviews, feel nice. Money is of course important, but please don't make games for money. As you see, it's hard work, and payments most of the time won't be huge. The main reward is the journey. As cliche as that may sound, you need to really enjoy the process or it's not worth it. As I've said in almost every video recently, I've learned a great deal creating this game. A staggering majority did, and I'll promise you this, I'm going to put all this experience to good use. To conclude, The Dreadful Whispers is a critical success with the lovely reviews people are writing. It's a massive success in terms of what I learned by creating it. And yeah, for now it's a modest financial success. Still pretty far away from my initial objective, but that's fine. With that said, thanks so much for watching. If you're curious to see what I'll do next, please subscribe. Remember, The Dreadful Whispers has just launched on itch.io for Windows. Consider being one of the first to explore my world on that platform. Alright, big thank you to my...
Наши сотрудники работают удаленно. Нужен только компьютер и стабильный интернет. Смены по 4 часа в день.
Ищу толковых механиков. Выбирайте график и выходите. С меня надежные инструменты, премии по итогам работы.
Lately I've been spending a lot of time playing a game called Minecraft. You might have heard of it. You know, the one with the blocks, and the blocks. And after spending countless hours building questionable structures and committing virtual war crimes, I've made the realization that Minecraft needs of our time. It's a game of infinite possibilities, where creations are limited only by your imagination, and the capabilities of your computer. Sure, it may not have the realistic physics, but I think that that's actually what makes Minecraft so special. The simple graphics, combined with the slightly inaccurate physics, removes players from the restrictions of the material world, allowing them to create pretty much whatever they want. And I won't be having any of that. You see, when I make a game, I don't want the players to be creative or have fun. No, I want a game that makes people suffer and feel pain. Which is why today I'm going to be ruining countless childhoods by completely and utterly destroying everything that makes Minecraft good and adding realistic physics to Minecraft. We've got realistic falling blocks, next generation ragdoll technology, and the wobbliest, most nauseating gameplay the world has ever seen. Let's get to it. So in order to add physics to Minecraft, you first need a Minecraft, obviously. Now I could have tried to make a physics to the actual game, but writing an entire physics engine sounds like a lot of effort and math, and I'm not a huge fan of either of those, so I opted for the next best thing. Instead of adding physics to Minecraft, I'm actually going to add Minecraft to physics by recreating the entire game using the Unity game engine, which has a very nice built-in physics engine. That seems logical, right? Let's get started. So as you probably know, Minecraft has infinite procedurally generated worlds made up of blocks, or voxels. And it's in these worlds that all the Minecrafting takes place, so that was what I decided to try to replicate first. I started off small with a little 1x1 unit dirt block, which is just a cube with a dirt texture scribbled on. Then I made a simple script that spawned a bunch of these blocks in a grid, just like in Minecraft. However, unlike Minecraft, these blocks aren't too exciting and lack a certain depth to them. So I threw in a bit of Perlin noise, which is a type of randomness that can be used to generate maps sort of like this, to offset the cubes. And now we have some wavy hills. Cool, that's it, right? We have our terrain, now all we have to do is add more cubes and make the world a bit bigger and... oh, right. Apparently, having this many cubes in the world at once isn't great for performance. Luckily, there is a pretty simple solution. Instead of making tons of cube objects, we can instead create a single object that is shaped like multiple cubes, which should be pretty efficient. And since the world is made up of cubes, this should be pretty easy, as all we have to do is manually create squares depending on where the blocks are, update the colliders, for collision, and let Unity handle the rest. And so, as ever, and my computer is no longer screaming in pain. But it's still a little small, and Minecraft worlds are infinite, which is a bit of a problem. But this too has a simple solution. You see, the world in Minecraft seems infinite because of something called chunks. Basically, each chunk is, well, a chunk of blocks. In Minecraft, there's these big boxes, 16 by 16 blocks wide, and 256 blocks high, that contain all the blocks inside this area. And Minecraft saves these chunks and loads in the closest chunks to the player, and if the player moves to another chunk, it unloads old ones and loads new ones, which allows the world to be very, very big, since there are always only a set number of chunks active at any given time. So I implemented that by basically just storing our chunks in a dictionary, which is a fancy data structure that lets me map each chunk to a coordinate, and loading, unloading, or generating new chunks every time the player moves to a different chunk using this dictionary.
Stuck at home? Start selling your idle PC power while you sleep. Install NiceHash Miner, and with a simple click of a button, you will join thousands of miners around the world. Your PC will work for you even when you sleep. Register at NiceHash, and give it a try today. ощущение, что это какая-то декорация специально построена для вот этого вот мероприятия.
90-е останутся культовым черно-белым фильмом, однажды показавшим советскому человеку, что ночь нужна.
And yeah, loading and unloading already existing chunks around the play works flawlessly and the performance is pretty good, since we're just getting the chunks from the dictionary and setting whether or not they're active. However, generating these chunks for the first time can be pretty slow, since the game has to do quite a bit of processing to generate stuff. And due to how Unity scripts all run on the same thread, which basically means that they run in all of the other code has to wait for the chunks to be generated before they can be run. In other words, the chunk generation lags. So I decided to make the terrain generation multi-threaded, which allows multiple bits of code to run at once. And so, after many hours of frustration and a couple more trips to Stack Overflow, I managed to get a terrain generation in the background separate. The game doesn't lag anymore, which is pretty cool. I then threw in a very basic player controller to move around in the game, and we now have a functioning Minecraft world. The terrain generation system works pretty much the same as in actual Minecraft, and chunks will load and unload around the player, which allows for pretty much infinite worlds, at least as long as your computer doesn't run out of memory, the noise library doesn't start screwing up with huge numbers like what happened with the Minecraft Farlands, and Unity decides to behave. However, unlike the terrain gen in Minecraft, everything is, well, made of dirt. So let's spice it up a little. I wasn't all that happy with the boring old hill, so I layered on a bit more Perlin noise to spice up the surface, and added some 3D Perlin noise underground to get these cave things. I also turned lower blocks into stone, put some bedrock on the bottom, turned any exposed dirt blocks to grass, added a couple ore blocks and some ore generation, and made trees randomly appear. And now it's starting to look a bit like Minecraft. Keyword being look because it sure as hell doesn't play like Minecraft. So let's add the player into the game. Now in high intensity app, which allows the world to be very, very big, since there are always only a set number of chunks active at any given time. So I implemented that by basically the dictionary, which is a fancy data structure that lets me map each chunk to a coordinate, and loading, unloading, or generating new chunks every time the player moves to a different chunk using this dictionary. And yeah, loading and unloading already existing chunks around the play works flawlessly and the performance is pretty good, since we're just getting the chunks from the dictionary and setting whether or not they're active. However, generating these chunks for the first time can be pretty slow, since the game has to do quite a bit of processing to generate the terrain and meshes and stuff. And due to how Unity scripts all run on the same thread, which basically means that they run in order one after another, all of the other code has to wait for the chunks to be generated before they can be run. In other words, a lot. So I decided to make the terrain generation multi-threaded, with multiple bits of code to run at once. And so, after many hours of frustration and a couple more trips to Stack Overflow, I managed to get it working. Now, the terrain generates in the background separately from everything else, which means that the game doesn't lag anymore, which is pretty cool. I then threw in a very basic player controller to move around in the game, and we now have a functioning Minecraft world. The terrain generation system works pretty much the same as in actual Minecraft, and chunks will load and unload around the player, which allows for pretty much infinite worlds, at least as long as your computer doesn't run out of memory and doesn't start screwing up with huge numbers, and he decides to behave. However, unlike the terrain gen in Minecraft, everything is, well, made of dirt. So let's spice it up a little. I wasn't all that happy with the boring old hill, so I layered on a bit more Perlin noise to spice up the surface, and added some 3D Perlin noise underground to get these cave things. I also turned lower blocks into stone, put some bedrock on the bottom, turned any exposed dirt blocks to grass, added a couple ore blocks and some ore generation, and made trees randomly appear. And now it's starting to look a bit like Minecraft. Keyword being look because it sure as hell doesn't play like Minecraft. So let's add the player into the game. Now in high-intensity action-packed games such as Minecraft, good responsive controls are very important. Without them, games can be really difficult to play, which can cause a lot of frustration. Which is exactly why I decided to make the player the wobbliest ragdoll man you could possibly make. Well, technically he's not a ragdoll or a man. He's actually just an invisible capsule thing, because in actual Minecraft, when you're in first-person mode, you can't see your body. So that's why you can't see your body in this game either. Definitely not because I was too lazy to make a body or anything. But anyways, our bean here is essentially just a rigid body with some script. I've set it up so that pressing the WASD keys applies force to move it like a standard first-person controller, except with one key difference being that the force is actually applied at a point slightly above the center of mass, so moving around will cause it to tilt. Then I apply torque or force to the rotation to try to balance it, and if you redo a
touch anything, it starts wobbling uncontrollably and causes uncomfortable levels of motion sickness. And finally, I added a healthy amount of post-processing and motion blur to really rub in the motion sickness. And that's pretty cool. We basically have really, really bad Minecraft now. Except, well, you can't mine or craft. So I think it's time we added destruction. Now in Minecraft, if you want to break a block, you just have to point at it and click, which is far too convenient and easy for my tastes, even with a player as wobbly as this one. I want the players to really struggle and to suffer and to just have a bad time all around, which is why in games like Getting Over It, it made the player's hand a ragdoll. And in order to mine, you have to physically hit the block with your limp noodle hand. It's just great. I basically created this nightmare of game design by first modeling and rigging a hand in Blender. No, not that Blender, the 3D modeling tool. Although judging by the quality of this model, I might as well just use an actual Blender. But anyways, I then took this model over to the gift of the slightest bit of strength, so that it isn't a complete wet noodle and at least has a bit of resemblance to an arm. Then I slapped on a pickaxe, and now you can break things by left-clicking, which But anyways, I then took this model over to Unity and gave it the gift of life. I also gave the arm just the slightest bit of strength, so that it isn't a complete wet noodle and at least has a bit of resemblance to an arm. Then I slapped on a pickaxe, and now you can break things by left-clicking, which swings the arm and activates the script that handles collisions to break blocks. I then threw in a bit of Unity particle system to make it look nice and made the block drop a smaller version of itself for the player to pick up, and yeah, I am ready to mine. But wait, there's still something missing. Hear that? It sounds like inaccurate physics. And we can't have any of that, so let's do some physicsing. So basically our problem is that when you separate blocks from the ground by breaking other blocks, things float, which last time I checked isn't very realistic. So let's make them fall. We're gonna have to do a bit of scripting for this one. Basically, our problem of objects floating happens whenever you separate a cluster of blocks from the ground by breaking the block holding them together. So all we have to do is run a check where whenever we break a block, we do a flood fill, which is a way to loop through the blocks starting from the block we destroyed outwards, to find any separated objects and check if anything is floating. And we'll stop searching after a certain amount of blocks have been searched, which should save a bit of processing power and also prevent the entire world from falling. This does mean that really big structures won't fall, but I highly doubt anyone would actually be able to create a structure of that size with these janky controls, so it should be fine. Then, if we find any floating we'll just separate those blocks from the chunk, slap on a couple of box colors for accurate collisions, and add a rigid body to make it fall. Now at first glance, you might think that we're looping through tons of blocks every time we break one, and you aren't wrong. However, it actually doesn't run that badly due to how we aren't actually searching that many blocks, and the code is pretty optimized and is essentially just looping through an array of integers, which is pretty fast. Then I applied this to the blocks that have already fallen using some additional bits of mass, and now you can break them into even smaller pieces, which is pretty cool. So now we can break blocks. The next logical move is to add placing blocks, so let's do that. Now placing blocks in the actually good version of Minecraft functions pretty much the same as breaking them. You point and then right click. However, I once again wanted more. If blocks magically appear, the hand will throw a mini version of the block, which will whatever it hits. It also bounces off the physics-enabled blocks because I was too lazy to make them build into them. But I think it looks better like this anyways, and you can do some pretty cool trick shots, so it's here to stay. The way I made this was very similar to how I implemented breaking blocks, except this time the arm throws the block. And it works great. Placing blocks is now not only realistic, but also nearly impossible to do well, which I'm sure will be great in a game about building things. However, that reminds me, Minecraft isn't just about building, it can also be about adventure and discovery. And that isn't all that fun to do alone, so let's make some friends. I started off with a zombie first, because while I haven't met one in person, I'm sure they're friendly, right? Anyway.
нахуй. Вот это есть оно самое, да. Ну как? Звезда вообще, звезда у меня, да. Скажем, скажем.
Anyway, they modeled and rigged it in Blender, slapped on some textures I downloaded off the Minecraft Scheme website, and then stuffed it into the Unity ragdoll generator, and now he's floppy. Maybe a bit too floppy. I don't want him to act like he's dead all the time, I want him to be, well, undead. So I added some code to balance him and to make him walk. It basically works by first applying forces to balance it just like with the player. And to get it to walk, I use some inverse kinematics, which is a way to tell foot to get a point by bending leg. Basically, it keeps the foot firmly planted on the ground. Then if the foot gets too far from the body, it just steps towards the body where it sticks to the ground again. And yeah, he's alive. That's just great. But now it's time for the next step, teaching him to feel pain. So I made a sword in Blender, reused the code for breaking blocks, and now I can do very bad things. I then added copious amounts of blood and made the zombie completely ragdoll and death, and yeah, pain and suffering. But now that our zombie guy can feel pain, I think it's only fair if the player can too. So I made its arms at the player and added a health bar, and that's just great. Really good stuff. However, while the player is now able to feel a pretty good amount of pain, I still felt that it wasn't enough. And that's because while zombies do quite a bit of damage, they don't naturally spawn in the world yet, and I've just been manually placing them in, so there are no zombies to actually do damage in the actual game. So I made a spawning system and began learning about shaders so I could throw together a little day-night cycle, since zombies only spawn at night. But this ended up being kind of useless today also, because I wanted more pain. But hey, we have pretty sunsets now, and things are looking pretty good. We have what is basically a fully functional game. But I still felt that there was something missing. I mean, we have a sword and a pickaxe and some blocks, but that's pretty much it. So I added a gun. Yep, gun. In Minecraft. Why? No idea. Basically, how it works is that it's a gun. You can shoot things, it breaks blocks, it breaks enemies, it's a jack of all trades. Well, it's really more of a master of all trades, because it's very overpowered. So to balance this out, I decided to set up an inventory and a crafting system. Well, sort of. The inventory is really just a counter for the 7 items in the game that you can actually obtain, and the crafting is just a menu with a button because I am lazy. Also, there's only one recipe for the gun, because I actually decided to make the player start off with the diamond axe sword, because the pickaxe is the only besides the gun that can actually break blocks, so you kind of need it, and the matches the pickaxe, so yeah. And finally I went and added a main menu where you can change all sorts of settings, and added some sound effects. And now it's really starting to look like Minecraft. You can mine for ore, craft things, build things, explore, commit war crimes. In fact, this game has also for a few minor things like a few blocks, a couple mobs, and water. But I'm sure no one will notice. And yeah, this was making Minecraft but with physics or something. I'm not really sure, I just made this video because I wanted to mess around with this else. The result turned out we can try playing it through the link for the download below. It's completely free and it's pretty cool. But yeah, that's all. If you want to see more dumb videos like this, and there will be many more very dumb videos, then consider leaving a like and subscribing and turning on notifications and all that good stuff. Okay, that's enough begging for now, I'm gonna go.
Наши сотрудники работают удаленно. Нужен только компьютер и стабильный интернет. Смены по 4 часа в день.
Собирайте графика выходит. С меня надежные инструменты, премии по итогам работы.
Расширяем производство.
Rain, caves, water, trees. Figure out how these games work and convert my Minecraft clone into something with much more realistic terrain. It should be procedurally generated, infinite, and fully destructible. Let's start with a basic sine wave. If you really use your imagination, it sort of looks like some hills or something. So let's turn it into terrain. In order for it to actually be rendered by a game engine, it's made out of triangles. In 2D, we can accomplish this with an algorithm called marching squares. Marching squares will build up our mesh one piece at a time by checking how the terrain intersects with many small square-shaped regions. For our terrain generator, we'll use the 3D version of marching squares called, you guessed it, marching cubes. And instead of a sine function, we'll use some slightly more advanced coherent noise functions, which create much more natural-looking hilly terrain. Alright, let's get programming. After reading through a bunch of articles and maybe stealing a little code, I was able to get started on my own implementation. And after a few hours of work, we've got a pink rectangle. Alright, there we go. Here is marching cubes generating a mesh from 3D simplex noise. Yeah, I don't even understand. Now let's add this to the existing Minecraft world. The terrain generator works by splitting the world up into smaller pieces called chunks, which can be loaded in and out as the player moves. Blocky mesh generator for marching cubes, and it works without any problems. Okay, now we can walk around some procedurally generated terrain. So the blocks are definitely gone, but as you can tell, the terrain isn't really smooth. The solution to this is Interpolation. Basically, we'll use some voxel data to estimate where the terrain is of each marching cube, which will give a better approximation of the surface. So let's steal some more code, program that, and what the? Okay, something's not right. My code actually worked. Now the terrain is nice and smooth, but it's suspiciously smooth, and still doesn't look like real terrain. The solution? Fractal noise. Fractal noise just takes a bunch of noise layers of decreasing scales and adds them together, each contributing smaller and smaller details to adds them together. Fractal noise just takes a bunch of noise layers of decreasing scales and adds them together, each contributing smaller and smaller details. And the result is much more natural looking terrain. Throw on a brand new grass texture and, yeah, that looks pretty bad. But it's probably the most you can expect from me. Now let's add in some caves. Just like in the Minecraft clone, we'll use some 3D noise to cut pieces out of the terrain. But this time, the transition between the caves and the surface ended up being a little bit of a challenge because I had to deal with that whole interpolation thing. But I eventually sort of figured it out, and we've got caves again. Next I added water chunks back in, which worked perfectly with the new terrain system, and slapped on that amazing stone texture. I unfortunately couldn't just reuse the tree generation code from the Minecraft clone, so what I ended up doing was taking a sphere and a cone and sort of combining them together. And trees. For terrain modification, I want to make something similar to Astroneer, where you dig these nice circular holes and build these big worm things. So what do we have to do? Just raycast and then increase or decrease the closest voxel values. Should be pretty easy, right? After a lot of tweaking, we've now got this cool little mining and building mechanic. Next I played around with masking and transitioning between different noise layers, so now we can create larger
scale amount. слабо. Слабо везде у меня просто все. Пора Байкова. Спасибо, до свидания. Как жить будешь? Как жить надо? Как ты будешь жить? Как надо? Не слышишь меня? Не слышишь? Нет, нет, нет. Что я...